Hello, my name is Isabella Perez, Recreation Leader for the City of Socorro. Thank you for joining today's meeting. Before the meeting begins, we would like to remind our guests to remove all hats and silence all electronic devices. No destructive behavior or outbursts will be tolerated, and violators are subject to ejection and possible prosecution.
Hola, mi nombre es Judy Rodríguez, secretaria de Planificación de la Ciudad de Socorro. Gracias por participar en la reunión de hoy. Antes de que comience la reunión, nos gustaría recordarles a nuestros invitados favor de quitarse los sombreros y silenciar todos los dispositivos electrónicos. No se tolerará ningún comportamiento perturbador ni exabrupto y los infractores estarán sujetos a expulsión y posible procesamiento.
It is 6:05 p.m. This meeting is called to order. Item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, led by the Tigua Next Generation interns. Thank you. You may be seated. Would each intern, when I call your name, please step forward? We'd like to award you with a certificate of student leadership. Silas Vallejo. Akira Bigelow. Sarah Cebollero. Kara Lopez. Jacob Lopez. Sebastian Monroy. Lina Rojas. J.D. Sublaski. Damian Tarin.
I need you guys to shift to the middle so we can get a group photo with them. Big smile, big smile. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2. Thank you, guys.
Item number 3, establishment of quorum.
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Here.
Alejandro Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Ivy Avalos.
Here.
Rudy Cruz.
Aye.
And Ivan Colom Villalobos. Is absent. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 4, public comment.
We have one speaker, Rene Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, you have 3 minutes.
I thought Charlie was going to help me, but I guess not. I'm here for two things. I'm very disappointed in the county that they're terminating the bus services for our residents. It's sad to see that our representative, Olguin, do that to us, but I guess elections have consequences. On the happier note, I'd just like to say to our chief of police, you're back there. I was here when he got on board in our city. I had the pleasure of talking to him in the HR office at that time. And I told him that the only expectation I have is that I want him to be better than what we had. And he did. And he blew my expectations away when I was here in council. And you can tell by the quality of officers we have today. And I just want to say thank you, and you will be missed. And I just want to say that not only were you a great employee for the city of Socorro, but I'm glad to call you a friend. And what can I say? You will be missed. And those are big shoes to fill. Not in stature, but big fields to shoot. So I just want to say that you will be missed, and I hope that council is going to have the task to fill his shoes. So I just want to say, thank you, and God be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, those were all our speakers, and Mrs. Villalobos joined the meeting at 6:10.
Well, no, I was here early, Miss Olivia, and then the system said that I was booted out.
They had to restart the stream? I mean,
Yes.
that's fine. That's fine. Mr. Cruz, do you have a motion?
Yeah, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to move items up in the order of 22 and 21.
Second.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz.
Aye.
And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Aye.
Okay, item number 22, discussion and action on approving the issuance of the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022 annual financial report by SBNG Certified Public Accountants.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We do have Mr. Teo Cabrera from SBNG Certified Public Accountants is here to present the fiscal year 2022 annual financial report.
Good afternoon. Council members will be providing copies of the report, so if you can give us just a few seconds so we can distribute these to you, please.
Thank you.
We also have a set of slides. I'm not sure if you have those available to make it a little easier for everybody to follow the report. All right, so we were here for the last meeting. We promised we would be done, so we're done. And I wanted to express my thankfulness to Finance Director, Mr. Charlie Casiano, who was extremely helpful in helping us get the audit done, as well as Ms. Rodarte and the rest of the employees at the City of Socorro. So we have completed our audit. We completed it this last Thursday, and it was submitted electronically to the U.S. Clearinghouse before the required deadline. And with that in mind, I'm here to provide a brief summary of the report and answer any questions regarding the audit or the results of the year ended 2022. So if we can move forward on the slides a little bit. Another one. So the first thing I'd like to explain, in particular for those that have a copy of the audit report, On page 2 of the report, we have our independent auditor's report. So it's a little section, it's a 3-page section that discusses our audit opinion, right, which is the most important thing that we're trying to develop, right, as we work on the audit. So for the year ended September 30, 2022, we are issuing a clean audit opinion or an unmodified audit opinion, and you can see it right there in the first 2 paragraphs of page 2. And what that essentially means is that the numbers that you're seeing in the audit, they're fair and square, right? So we don't have any other adjustments, any modifications to those numbers, right? We've also applied all the accounting rules, all the accounting requirements to present the financial statements, and they are meeting the most recent audit requirements applicable in the U.S., right, for governmental accounting. So with other kinds of reports, sometimes the auditor has problems and they issue a report with modifications or they issue an adverse report. But in the case of Socorro, we have a clean audit report, which is the best that you can get as a result of a financial statement audit, all right? So if we move on to page, still on the same slide, we could go a little further on pages 6 and 7. Page 6 is the balance sheet or the statement of net position, and page 7 is the income statement, right? So I always like to give an overview of how the year ended, right? A big focus of the audit is looking at the finances at the end of the year, right? Looking at the amount of cash on the bank, the liabilities, the amount that's due on the bonds, and just making sure that all those numbers that you're seeing there are true numbers, right, in that balance sheet, right? That is one of the biggest focuses, presenting a fair and square balance sheet, right? So the most important thing, of course, is the amount of cash position, cash and investments. And the number that you're seeing there is approximately $28 million, including investments, restricted cash, and cash available for operations. And that is on page 6 and the top of page 6, right? So it's a really good cash position to end the year. And in particular, in fiscal year 2022, there were a lot of moving parts because you receive ARPA funds, and the ARPA funds remain unspent for the most part. And then you also received a bond from the Texas Water Development Board for another $10 million. So that contributed significantly to your increase of cash right at the end of the year. So the $28 million is probably the highest we've seen it in a long time. I mean, we've been doing the audit for about 5 years, and this is probably the biggest cash position you've had, and it's truly because of those two sources of funds, the ARPA funds and the Texas Water Development Board funds, right, that are unspent. The other item that's important here, near the end of page 6, where it says bonds payable, that's the amount of public debt, right? Those are the bonds that are outstanding, the liabilities that you owe. So it's about $32 million. And that includes the newest bond, right, which was the Texas Water Development Bond for $6,000 is included in there, $6 million, I'm sorry. So the net position at the end of the year is $36 million. $36 million is basically the difference between assets and liabilities. And whenever the net position increases, it means that the government is financially in a better position than it was the year before. And for the fiscal year that we audited, the net position did increase by about $4 million. That's a pretty good increase, right? From $32 million to $36 million, right? And you can see the increase in page 7. Page 7 is the income statement, right? So again, whenever we see an increase in net position, it means that the revenues that you brought in exceeded the expenses. It means that you're paying off your debt, right? So it means that economically you're in a better position than you were the year before. So that's the result for this year. And you can see a little more of that on the following slide. We have the statement of activities, which is page 7. Total revenues were $19 million. Total expenses were $15 million. And you can see the net income or the change in the net position there of about $4 million, right? So again, positive result. We want to see net position or net income increase year over year over year over year. Can we go to the next slide, please? The most important source of revenue is, of course, property tax revenues, and that is in line with other governments that are about the same size as the city of Socorro, so there's nothing unusual about that structure. For fiscal year 2022, that was about 50% of your budget. 50% of your budget came from property taxes, right? And the rate was about 80 cents per every $100, right? So really the increase that you're getting is really an increase in the values of the properties, not necessarily a big increase in the rate. So that's really what's driving the increase there. Another very important source of income are going to be federal and state grants. And in particular, over the last 5 years, the city has been really active in getting grants. For this year that we audited, the majority of the grant money is being recognized as income came from TxDOT, right? From TxDOT. So most of those $2 million are being used for roads, for the Arterial 1 expansion, also for the Nuevo Hueco tanks expansion, which are in the engineering phase still. A lot of those projects are being funded by TxDOT. And also there's some police expenses like overtime for police officers and police equipment that is being funded by grants. So it's very important to keep that in mind. I mean, that's a way to continue growing the city without relying so much on taxes is to bring, and debt is to bring other grants, in particular TxDOT grants, to help cover those large dollar expenses. The third largest source of revenue is going to be sales taxes at number 3, and that is approximately $2 million or 12% of the total revenue in terms of your budget. Right? So about 12% of your budget comes from sales taxes, and there was a significant increase year over year, and you'll see it in one of the following slides, but basically what we're seeing is that the increase in sales taxes is kind of reflective of what's going on with inflation. Right, so there's been inflation in the last year and a half. Prices are going up. So as a consequence of that, the amount of sales taxes the city is collecting is keeping up with that or exceeding that. Can we go to the next slide, please? So on page 8 of your financial statements, we have the individual funds. And it's a lot of information, but if you go to page 9, that probably is the most important part of the fund financial statements, and it kind of just shows the individual funds of the government. So you can see how much is in the general fund, and then how much is in all the other funds that are restricted for other sources, right? So the general fund is the most important fund or the most important account for the city of Socorro, and you can see a fund balance of about $7 million, out of which $2 million is an emergency reserve. We hopefully don't have to use that ever. And then about $4.7 million is left available to spend. And again, you can see that on page 9 where we break down the funds. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this is not, let's see, this is, again, a summary of what I'm discussing. The general fund has $7 million in fund basis. And then you can see the other funds. The one that's really big is the Texas Water Development Fund that has about $6 million that has not been used yet for operations, and that's going to be used for flooding control. In the next slide, we have a 5-year analysis. And again, this is just to bring a little bit of perspective of how the numbers are changing from year to year. But of course, one of the important things is property tax revenues. And you can see how, you know, the increase we experienced from $9 million to $11 million in 2022. Again, most of it is due to the increase in property tax values. Sales taxes, we went from 1.2 to 2.3, so about a little more than a 12% increase right there. So again, more or less reflective of what's going on in the economy with inflation. Grant revenue, it swings a lot. I mean, you had some years that were really heavy on grant revenue. 2018, 2019, you had some really big TxDOT projects in those years. And then it kind of started rebuilding again. 2021, you had a CARES grant award, and you used most of the CARES award in that year. 2022 was not as big as other years in terms of grant income. but we're expecting a lot more because of the ARPA grant, of course, in 2023. Infrastructure, it continues to grow. Infrastructure is how much you've invested in roads and the streets, renovations. So it's now hitting the 50 million mark. It was 33 million 2018, so it has grown by approximately 80% in the last 5 years. A result really of getting those TxDOT grant and also getting some bond money to fund some of that. Long-term debt, we see it at the highest it's been in the last 5 years because of the Texas Water Development Board. You're at $34 million. And total cash and investments, I like to see that together because when there's excess cash or temporarily excess cash is put in an investment account. So as you can see, we're ending the year with approximately $10 million of unrestricted cash and investments, right? So an increase compared to the 4 years before that. So in other words, I mean, really no red flags, nothing that would alarm us. Again, the audit was a very clean audit. We did not have any findings. Last audit, the audit for 2021, we did have a finding that had to do with one of the TxDOT grants. We wrote up the city because there were a lot of back and forth going on with TxDOT and trying to get TxDOT to approve those grant expenses. The city has been working with its engineers, and it's almost to the point where all those expenses have now been reimbursed by TxDOT. There's still a little bit hanging out there, but we feel that the finding has been resolved with the response that the city has done. If we can move forward a little bit more to the slides. This year, we audited the TxDOT grant again, and we were satisfied with that progress that was made to try to catch up with those invoices that were submitted and were rejected in the first place. And now, after 2 years, it finally seems like you guys are catching up with that. We did not have any findings, but we did have one recommendation, and that will be found in the next slide as well. And it just has to do with improving the accounting for ARPA funds. Now, the ARPA grant, it has been around for about 2 years, and the city only has up until, I believe, December 2024 to finish spending everything, all right? So it's important that you guys continue to use those funds to monitor how much has been used. And even though we didn't spend that much time with this grant, the reason for that is because it was still early in 2022 to look at it. However, what we did look is that there are some expenses that are incurred with ARPA funds, but they haven't been reported to the grantor yet. So we recommend that a reconciliation be done to go back, review those expenses, and determine if they're going to be funded by ARPA or if they're going to be covered by another budget source, right? The reason for that is because the ARPA program started early in 21, and then after the first year, the grant guidance changed, and therefore the city management had to reassess some of those ARPA expenses, and some of them no longer were eligible under the new framework. But they're still sitting in the ARPA bank account, so we need to figure out if they're going to stay there, if you all are going to try to get them under another category so the grant can cover them, or if you're going to formally determine that they're going to be covered by the general fund or bond funds, okay? So that was the only recommendation we found, and just to improve communication between the grants department and the finance department, so we can properly account for those expenses that were originally ARPA expenses, and now we're not really sure if they're ARPA expenses or not. So that was the only observation we had this year. But again, it didn't raise to an audit finding, but nonetheless, we think it's an important recommendation that you all address that as soon as possible. So that was it. Again, we did not become aware of any fraud. We also did not become aware of anything else that rose to the level of a finding. So we issued a clean report, and as I mentioned, it was already submitted last Friday. So I just want to open the room for any questions from any of the council members.
I have a question.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
So is this financial report still pending some items? Because I understand that when the ARPA funding was allocated and given to the municipalities and organizations,
Right.
the funding came before policy.
Right.
And so policy wasn't developed until afterwards, but still municipalities had to spend those funds and we
Right.
had to act fast. And I know that's something that you're wanting us to categorize
Right.
and appropriate funding accordingly. So you're gonna come back and say, and add to this, is there gonna be like an amendment to this or?
No, what's going to happen is that in the following audit, there's going to be more ARPA expenses. So instead of selecting the TxDOT grant, now we're going to do the audit procedures on the ARPA grant. So
Okay.
one of the things that we're going to review is we're going to review the allocation of those expenses to make sure that they've been properly reported to the granting agency. And if not resolved, it could be a finding, right? Or you could determine, you know what, those expenses no longer fit our ARPA budget, so we're just going to have the general fund reimburse them. And if that's the case, then it wouldn't be a problem. But as of September 2022, and even as of now, that hasn't been determined, right? So we're closing the audit without a finding, but with a recommendation that those unallocated expenses, they need to be resolved. And if they're going to be determined that they're eligible for ARPA, then they need to be either amended in the previous ARPA report, or they need to be included in the next ARPA report.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's likely that they're not going to be eligible. It's more than likely.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then we just need to consider the general fund now owes some money back to the ARPA account to basically make the ARPA account whole for those expenses that were incurred at the very
Correct.
beginning.
And I know there wasn't any findings, but were there any recommendations from the firm as far as our internal controls and financial reporting? Do you guys recommend that we change something, strengthen certain areas, or do you see that we're operating and functioning just?
Right.
You
That's
know.
a great question. I think you're operating with really high standards. We, again, did not have any concerns. Otherwise, we would do a finding. We considered doing a finding for this particular item with ARPA. However, understanding the circumstances that you had to make some decisions at the very beginning of the grant, and it was before the guidance came out, we feel like it's not necessarily a lack of control, it's just the circumstances that you guys had to spend the money, and now some of it wasn't eligible, so you just need to figure out what you're gonna do with those expenses. Since the money was spent, now the question is, well, if it's not ARPA, then it's general fund, right? That's really the situation. It's not really a finding. However, a good area for improvement is just to have better communication between the grants department and the finance department. Just because there is a lot of financial reporting that is required for the grants, and these expenses, it wasn't clear exactly how it was handled in the reporting that was done for ARPA, right? So we think that eventually you're going to have to do like a full reconciliation and better communication between the two departments to make sure that you guys kind of sort out those original projects that you had for ARPA. You do have one sub-recipient, which is Project Vita, under this particular grant. So one of the requirements is that you monitor them. So you're going to have to make sure that you request their audit, and there's going to have to be some monitoring requirements to make sure that Project Vita is using those funds, because the city, for lack of a better term, is on the hook for whatever Project Vita does wrong, if they were to do anything wrong, and we don't think they will. Right, so that particular mechanism is important. However, I don't think there's a problem. It's just a matter of having a monitoring program for that. You do used to have an internal auditor. You haven't been able to replace them yet. So it is important to have that other person, whether you call them an internal auditor or you call them just a second auditor, GL accountant, whatever. But having more segregation of duties is going to be really important. There's still a lot of things that Charlie does in his capacity as CPA. I mean, he does have a lot of experience. He's very knowledgeable, but it's always good to have someone else that, that can work with him. And with the internal auditor, it was nice because every once in a while she would review things for Charlie, and she was kind of like a second set of eyes, and she was also backup for him, right? So just having that second person, I think, is very important. And I understand you haven't been able to find that position, and you're now trying to find a different position for finance. So my recommendation is keep looking until you find someone, because it is a very important function just to have that second person there. Okay.
Mr. Garcia?
Hello. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation It was easy to follow.
Thank you.
It's something that we look forward to because numbers are difficult to follow. And
Government
also like
numbers
to-
are impossible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
governmental accounting is, I don't
Yeah.
know why they make it so complicated.
Right, but that was easy, and I really appreciate that
Sure.
because something like that, because the book is very thick. But I also like to thank staff and administrative for what they've done and kept us here with the good numbers, and the only one recommendation that we do have for the size of the city of Socorro. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your time. I also want to recognize our audit supervisor, Abby, who was really the one that did the heavy lifting and the long nights and all that, so thank you, Abby. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 21, discussion and action to approve Dustral Inc. to perform hot-in-place recycling paving for Rio Vista Alameda to North Loop in the amount of $92,736.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a hot-in-place recycling for Rio Vista Road from Alameda to North Loop. This is an efficient process used to repair and rehabilitate deteriorated streets and highways on-site with specialized equipment. The industrial mobile asphalt recycling system is the newest method of rejuvenating asphalt up to 2 inches or more. If we were to pave from that section in-house, it would total the cost of $197,000. The procurement is met through the sole source affidavit that has been signed by Dustral, Mr. Alshouse, and he is here in case you all have any questions or you would like to get more of an explanation on how this paving works.
Mr. Garcia?
Mrs. Rodriguez, do we have a date for this?
I'm sorry?
Do we have dates for this already?
So if it gets approved, because it is coming out of our capital, we can start as soon as they are ready to schedule it. They prefer to start it in the summer months because it's hotter as opposed to the winter. They're more successful when the temperatures are hotter.
Also, just to remind staff that school starts in like 3 weeks, so that traffic's gonna kick buck, so just thank you for the dates.
Yes, and we would make sure to schedule it. If it's not within the 3 weeks, next time they go on session.
Thank you.
And also, just to note that if we can't schedule it while school is out, they're willing to do it like overnight hours.
Mayor,
Ms. Villalobos?
I would like a presentation of how this system works. I think it would be great to know how it works and pass it on to our constituents who are constantly asking.
My name is Aaron Alshouse with Dustral Inc. in El Paso, Texas. This hot in place process that we use here in the city streets is it's a little bit different than our highway work. In our city work, we have our ovens that heat the asphalt. We preheat the asphalt. We usually run 3 to 4 ovens because we want to heat it gently without burning the existing asphalt oil in the material. And then our last heater, whether it's the 3rd or 4th one, has a scare-fire rake on it, which rakes it and breaks it all up to a depth of 3/4 inches to 1 inch. And and then we add a rejuvenating agent, which restores the asphalt. We have a remix paver that's built and designed by us that remixes it, relays it. So pretty much when we go down the road, right behind us, it's open to traffic and everything, and it's a fast process. You keep traffic running, other than going around us. We try and close off just to keep thoroughfare traffic out, but just keep local in there.
And we're going to show you a little video that we were able to find.
Okay, this is mainly our highway process. Our city work is gonna be a little bit different. This process we've designed where instead of using a scare-fire rake, we use milling drums on our heaters. But this is, as you can see, this is 10 heaters long, and it's over a quarter of a mile long, which is not the same process we use in the city. But this is where our original train developed into this bigger process, so we can get a deeper depth on highways and stuff. But in our local streets, it's a little bit different. It's there'll only be 3 to 4 of these heater ovens right here, with a recycled paver behind the last one which has a rake on it, and then we remix it with rejuvenating agent, which is an ARA1P, which is it's asphalt rejuvenating agent with polymers in it, which we've found through working on doing this for 50 years. That has been we've had best results out of it. And it's a fast process, and when we're off the road, the street's open at night, there's no drop-offs, there's no nothing, everything's just black, and then it breaks up all the cracks and everything. Restores your crack pattern.
And the guarantee of the work being done, you said up to 7 years.
Pardon me?
Up to 7 years, the guarantee that it'll last.
No, pretty much on the life expectancy on this, on rejuvenated asphalt, we usually say around 7 years, just the same as new asphalt. Now, a lot of it has to do with whether the ground is good and your base is good underneath, which after looking at this road, I can see the main problem is water getting down into the asphalt just because of it being old, oxidized, and deteriorated, and then your asphalt is flexible to begin with, and then over time it starts oxidizing and it just gets brittle and starts breaking, and that allows water in underneath, and that's when your base gets wet and it moves until it dries out again. But your road is stable. So I would say our work is usually guaranteed for 1 year, our workmanship. But now the asphalt, we always tell everybody it's basically like new asphalt. Cracks will return, just like everything cracks all the time. But your road will be smoother. We smooth up the ride. We restore the asphalt, and that's what it's basically a new asphalt layer on top.
Mayor?
Ms. Villalobos?
The asphalt that you're using is what we currently have right now, correct? That's what you're going to be smoothing out. And you're guaranteeing it for a year. After that, do we have to, can we resurface it again the same way?
Yes.
Or do we need to replace it?
No, you can resurface it again. Now, we recommend, now, we kind of discussed this before, but we always recommend some sort of a surface coat on it for our guarantee. So I don't know whether that's an overlay, whether it's a seal coat or something like that, but we always recommend that there is some sort of a top coat that goes on top of it.
Okay, and will this have that overlay, Ms. Rodarte?
No, ma'am, not for this presentation. No, that would be something that our staff would come back and seal.
Okay. All righty, thank you.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz, and Yvonne Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Moving on to presentations, item number 5, proclamation to recognize the month of July as the City of Socorro's Recreation Appreciation Month.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Victor Reta, Director of Recreation for the City of Socorro. It is my pleasure this evening to sponsor this request for proclamation At this time, I'd like to take a moment and thank my department for all their dedication and hard work with the City of Socorro. Ladies, your hard work, tenacity, and commitment in making the city a better place is inspiring. I am incredibly honored to have each of you in my team. I know the amount of time, energy, and dedication it takes to make the magic in Socorro happen. While we are imitated often, we are never duplicated. I am never disappointed by the amount of creativity and thoughtfulness each of you do in your work. You each are such an important role to this very small team, and I would like to give you a small token of appreciation. Mayor, can you read the proclamation first?
Yes.
Proclamation. Whereas recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Socorro, Texas, and whereas our recreation department is vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all community members, and contributing to the well-being of a community and region. And whereas our recreation department is a leading provider of healthy meals, nutrition services, and education aimed at building healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for individuals with disabilities, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all residents. And whereas our recreation is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community by increasing our community's economic prosperity through expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas our recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas our recreation department serves as the programmers and coordinators of several campaigns, events, and initiatives in the areas of recreation, communication, emergency response, historic preservation, and overall civic affairs, often representing the city as ambassadors on a local, state, and national stage. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Ivy Avalos, Mayor of the City of Socorro, along with the Socorro City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of July be recognized as Recreation Month in the City of Socorro, Texas.
Thank you.
You wanna?
I'll call them and then you can give it to them?
Sure.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start with Multimedia Specialist, Diana Rodriguez. Recreation Coordinator, Elizabeth Castro. Recreation Leader, Isabela Perez. And on vacation is our Wellness Coordinator, Laura Arredondo. Can I get a group picture with council?
I can move.
Moving on to consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz. And Yvonne Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Now moving on to regular agenda. Police Department, item number 16, discussion and action to award bid 23-06 for generator for police headquarters, communications center, and patrol building to Star Mountain Electrical Services in the amount of $219,541.05.
Motion to approve for discussion?
Second.
It has to be for approval, it can't be for discussion.
Has to be-
Approval or denial.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dave Burton, Chief of Police. So we did go out to bid for this because this is a 200 kW generator. It's one of the large construction type generators that you see at the schools, typical of that. When you're driving by, you can see them. This will be gas fed, which means that we don't need to fuel it. It automatically kicks in should we lose power, which we have done in the past. This will power the entire police area. So not only the headquarters building, but the patrol building, and more importantly, our communications center. And as you remember from a few months ago, we've done a presentation on that. That is a brand new facility with new equipment. So that will also be powered with this generator. The other piece of information for this is currently we're going through an accreditation process, and we have to have a generator in order to meet our accreditation guidelines. So we could get a smaller one if we were looking to power individual areas, but in this case, we're looking for all three. The other reason why we want all three is because we have a classroom now, which in an emergency we could turn into a shelter. So we can't put cots, et cetera, inside the police department compound, so that then we could bring residents in there if we had to move them from a certain area of the city. This is our second bid attempt, probably just because of the scope of work this takes. And we only had the one successful individual that bid on this job. This is actually twice, or cost double the amount that we expected. We expected this to come around $110,000 to $120,000, and as you can see, it's $219,000. So that exceeded what we were looking at. But we only have the one vendor that applied to us on this. Now, the good news is that ARPA funding that we haven't spent yet. Well, we're going to spend that. So the goal, because it's an emergency services and it is specifically for the dispatch area, which assists in emergency response, whether that be us or ambulance or fire, that would be covered under the ARPA. So we would be looking, and we'll get together on Monday with Alejandra, but we're looking to take this out of the ARPA funding. That's it. Any questions?
Is the smaller generator also for accreditation?
We could
Also needed?
Yes, ma'am. So we could use a smaller generator, but it wouldn't power. So the problem is that we have the individual structures, and each one has its own power source. So we would have to have 3 smaller generators that powered each one of the buildings. And one of our buildings is 800 amp. Your typical house service is 100 amp to 200 amp, and the 200 is large. So we would actually need probably 4 smaller, and that would be our main headquarters building. We'd need 4 small generators to power just that one building.
Instead of the one, or is that?
No, that would be, if we didn't
Just
get
all
this
4.
one, that would be our other alternative.
Okay, so what do we need right now in order to comply?
We just need this one, right? Because it's the simplest. So the other one with the smaller generators is we'd be looking to fuel those ourselves. So we'd either have to pick a diesel or a propane or a gasoline source, and then we would have to provide the fuel. This one hooks directly to the street, and we don't have to worry about it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz. And Yvonne Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Planning and zoning, item number 17, discussion and action to approve resolution 756, approving a preliminary plat for Horizon Park Unit 1 subdivision, being all of tracks 2A, 3B1, 4C, 1L, and 9A2, Block 3, Socorro Grant, City of Socorro, Texas. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lorraine Quimito, City Planner. Item 17 for your consideration is the preliminary plat for Horizon Park Unit 1. The property is located off of Horizon Boulevard being all of tracks 2A, 3B1, 4C1L, and 9A2, Block 3 of Socorro Grant. The current zoning is R2, medium density residential, and C2, general commercial. The tract totals in size is 31.7 acres, and it is currently vacant. The applicant is proposing commercial development along with single-family and multifamily residential development. Planning and zoning staff recommends approval with the condition that the traffic impact analysis be updated and master plan be updated as well prior to submitting the final plat. Planning and Zoning Commission voted for the approval with the conditions at their June 20th meeting. Next slide. Again, the location map shows the property being off of Horizon, in between Thunder and Patty Joe. Next slide is the zoning map. The area is outlined in blue. Zoning to the north, that's okay. Of Horizon is also R2 residential. To the west is commercial, and to the south and east, a mixture of agricultural and residential. Along Horizon, there's also still that mix of commercial and residential, single-family residential. The next slide is a couple of photographs of the property. The top photograph is a view from Horizon Boulevard, and the bottom photograph is a view from Range War Court. The next slide is an aerial view. You can see that a lot of the area is largely vacant. The mix of residential and commercial along Horizon. The next slide is the preliminary plat. It contains the future proposed road, Francisco Vaquera Drive, a commercial lot, a lot that's already been identified for apartments, a public pond, and then the larger lot at the bottom end of the plat is 23.4 acres. The consultants will be coming in the future with that plat for single-family residential. In summary, the applicant is requesting approval of the Horizon Park Unit 1 preliminary plat and is in agreement with the conditions. With that, staff can answer any questions, and Mr. Ascarate with CEA Group is on the Zoom call to answer any questions as well.
Mr. Cruz?
Ms. Camilo, for my situational awareness, do replats need to officially come to this body? Or can that be handled by your department and P&Z?
Planning and zoning, it should be the authority on plats, subdivision replats.
So we don't need to approve or deny?
You don't need to approve or deny these types of requests, but I understand that is what past councils have requested.
The reason why I bring it up is because in accordance with ordinances right now, as long as the applicant is well within their means and rights, and as they stay within the boundaries of what's currently written in our ordinances, it automatically goes through. And my next question is, the traffic impact analysis, is that a requirement for replatting?
Yes, that is a requirement for the preliminary plat.
Okay, so if there's one that's already in existence, does it expire after a certain date? Because I know that sometimes they may request like an updated version of that.
They don't expire, but there were changes to the master plan that necessitated an updated traffic impact analysis.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Martinez?
Good evening, Council. Jim Martinez, City Attorney. Lorraine, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you said it's not required. That's true. Under state law, it's not required. But the ordinance that we have in place now says City Council will make the ultimate decision. What Lorraine's referring to is state law is they don't have to be structured that way. The council could change that and say, we're delegating that to P&Z. They're the final authority on plats. Preliminary and final, we don't want to deal with that. And I can tell you many of the larger cities do, just because there's so much ongoing development, it becomes cumbersome. But as it stands now, I think you are required to pass on it only because that's what the ordinance that you've adopted says. Lorraine, is that fair?
That's,
okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment that we are looking to change that with our code rewrites, if that's something that you all are looking forward to doing, yes.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz.
Aye.
And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
City Manager, item number 18, discussion and action regarding notification from EPAT's LGC Transit Service in the city of Socorro on the beginning of reduction, including full elimination of transit service within the city of Socorro city limits. Staff is requesting direction from council on how to proceed.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This agenda item is to discuss a letter received by the LGC regarding reducing, including elimination of transit services. Currently, the El Paso County Rural Transit District has provided transit service at no cost to the city of Socorro and all areas outside the city of El Paso for several years. To date, the city is served by 5 existing transit routes: Route 30, Route 31, Route 40, Route 50, and Route 84. At this time, staff is seeking direction from council on how to proceed. These are the options. Yes. So the options that are before us is join the LGC in fiscal year 2024. As of today, the cost is unknown at this time. B is join the LGC in fiscal year 2024 and work towards establishing the city's own transit service through a transit study to identify services needed. And C would be establish the city's own transit service, develop a transit study to identify services needed. If LGC eliminates transit service in Socorro, the city is able to provide temporary transit service, survey the community transit needs, and establish an MOU with the city of El Paso to allow the use of a transfer station or transfer stations. Challenges, next slide. Ridership data for Socorro transit users is not available. EPADS, LGC, and Sun Metro do not capture ridership data for Socorro. Gaps in transit infrastructure, sidewalks, ADA accessibility, bus shelters, and limited access to transit for vulnerable populations. Next slide. Continued challenges is existing transit service leave large areas of Socorro completely unserved and without access to transit. Also, a transit study is needed to identify and document local demand for transit destinations, gaps in transit service, and barriers to access. We do have some existing resources for paratransit transportation services are already available. We have 3 ADA accessible vehicles will allow service to seniors and people with disabilities. Vehicles are available to general public, so as long people with disabilities and seniors are targeted and served. The city is pending the purchase of 2 additional ADA vehicles in the coming fiscal year. And vehicles can be used with the city of Socorro develops, while the city of Socorro develops a transit study to transport users to City of El Paso transfer stations. The cost to use the transportation for Sun Metro is $5,000. Like if we wanted to take them to Isleta, that would give us a sign and a place to park so we can drop off and pick up our residents. That would cost us $5,000. That cost might be going up, but not significantly. If you're wanting to use more than one transfer station, that would be the cost for each transfer station that you would need to transport your residents. Do you all have any questions?
Mr. Garcia?
For the record, the LCG had 5 routes here in Socorro, and they eliminated them because we weren't gonna enter the agreement, right? Is that factual?
So the city hasn't made a decision for fiscal year 2023. Looking at fiscal year 2024, in order for them to prepare on cost, it's important for them to know if the city of Socorro is going to join. If not, they would probably be looking into reducing our services or eliminating our services due to us not being able to join their LGC corporation. Mm-hmm.
Questions?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'd like to make a motion to go with C, where we make our own transportation and we oversee the routes that we want. And us as a council can direct staff on the routes we want to see for the future here in Socorro and see the costs for that for the upcoming fiscal year.
Can we bring up option C?
Can we bring up the slides, please?
Options.
I'll second that motion.
Any other questions? Mr. Reyes?
I was gonna make a comment, and just so everybody knows, the city of Socorro has no say what the county does before, and even if we were to join the LGC, it would be 1 against 3. And it's nothing new. We didn't have a say before, we're probably not gonna have a say after. So I think that's our best bet, do our own.
Well, I think, and I mean, we're in agreement with since the price is unknown of any product or service, we're hesitant to put our hands in our pocket and dish out an unknown amount. I get it. But I think that we need to develop and strategize and see what exactly ridership does look like here in Socorro. So let's get those numbers first, and then from there I think we can definitely move on. If there's a need for it, then there's a need, and if not, then there's not. We haven't identified one yet until we conduct a study. So I think that conducting a study would be our best bet right now at this time.
Do we know how long that would take?
No, so a study would cost about $100,000 to $120,000. We are looking for grant funds for that, so it could take from 6 months to a year in order for us to
We
be
can't use
completed
ARPA
with the
funds?
study. No, ma'am.
No? Okay.
So then option C is also attached to 100K.
Correct, so option C is more like, okay, let's conduct a study, right? Let's go after a study, and in the meantime, we do have some resources to be able to provide that transportation for our community, because right now, we don't even know the need of the community.
Let me ask you this. In the past, when the county was overseeing the transit operation within our area here, they don't have numbers of individuals. I mean, they don't.
So they do have numbers, but as a whole. So like Route 84, there's 50,000 people that, for a fiscal year that they do, but it's Sanelli, it's all of it's all the county.
Directly
all of
from
Route 84.
Socorro. They can't
They don't-
specify
they-
Socorro. Okay.
I don't think they've ever captured that data. Again, I feel staff did go out and, ride a bus, just we wanted to kind of feel the experience. We did make it to UTEP, but in order for us to get back, it would take us 3 hours to get back, so we had to ask for a ride for them to bring us back to our destination. And, I sound like a broken record, but our bus stops right now, it is really unfeasible or realistic for someone that can actually get a ride stand in 110-degree weather, waiting for a bus because we have no shade. You're in the sand, and the sand gets really, really hot. Pavement gets really, really hot. Unless they really, really need to, they'll stand there and wait for their transportation.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
I'm sorry, what is the motion?
Option C.
Okay,
C.
thank you. Just wanted to make sure that is part of the motion.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz. And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Item number 19, discussion and action to accept resignation of Chief of Police David Burton.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mayor,
Mr. Martinez?
Council Jim Martinez, City Attorney. This is a personnel item. The default under the Open Meetings Act is that personnel items must be addressed if you're going to deliberate it. in executive session, the one exception is if the person who is the subject of the personnel item themselves requests that it be done in open session, and Chief Burton has made that request. So you can stay in open session.
Thank you.
Okay, so good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is to accept Chief Burton's resignation. He's here today and would like to share some words with you all.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, Chief David Burton, City of Socorro, for the last time. So it's a little sad that I had I come before you today and offer my resignation. It's no wrongdoing on the part of any staff or anyone here within the City of Socorro. This is actually a family matter where I have to make this move back to be in close proximity to where they are. I just want to say that it's been a heck of a ride. 4 years ago, when I stood in front of you, or the council at that time, the instructions were change it, and that's it. So in the meantime, we've gone out and done that. We now have more officers than we had in the past. We have community outreach programs that weren't in place before. We have obviously new facilities. I just asked you for a new generator, new facilities, more professionalism in the faces of our police officers. They had a little going away celebration for me today, and the officers were all saying how much they appreciated what I'd done for them. And here's my thing. It's not a matter of appreciation for me, right? It's my honor to have led them, because every single one of those officers I hired. There were 20 plus officers in that room. And they are the faces of the Socorro Police Department. That is your new police department that's out there doing their job. Just to give you an example of what that looks like, when I started, we had 27,000 calls for service. We're up to 36,000 calls for service now. So we're out there doing the work that the community expects. And on top of that, we're also communicating with the community, whether it's Citizens Police Academy or our Police Athletic League or the chaplain or our victims advocate. So we have more avenues of communication within the community than we had in the past. So again, it's not the work that I did, it's the groundwork that I laid, and the officers that are out there are actually the ones that are doing the work, and I'm very appreciative of them. But thank you for the opportunity to be your chief of police. Unfortunately, I think my time here is done, and I do need to move on from here, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to say that he did so much because our administration allowed him to. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, no, it's not, we don't get stuff done if you guys don't approve our items, so we thank you for that.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz,
Motion, aye.
and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Chief Burton, you will be missed, and your legacy will move on with hopefully a new chief that can fill your shoes. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And unfortunately, yes.
Item number 20, discussion and action regarding search for new chief of police.
Motion to approve? Second.
So Mayor and Council, due to the police chief Dave Burnham resignation, we are wanting to start the recruitment process for our next chief of police. The first step is to update and amend our job description, prepare a recruitment brochure. Then we would go out, advertise and market through employee referrals, internet, social media platforms, news media, press release, a career fair. And then the selection process continues with civil service interviews. After that, we will have a public meeting to get the public input. Then the decision comes to council for final approval. So we are requesting if we can do the recruitment in-house as opposed to hiring a recruitment firm. right? I feel we did an excellent job when we brought Chief Burton here, and I think that we can do that again. So there's no need for us to spend $30,000 in a recruitment firm that's just gonna make us kind of do all the work.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz,
Aye.
and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's nothing for executive? Okay, do we have a motion to delete items 23 through 26?
Motion to delete items 23 to 26.
Second.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz,
Aye.
and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ruben Reyes,
Yes.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia,
Aye.
Rudy Cruz,
Aye.
and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Meeting adjourns at 7:16 PM. Good night.